Hello and welcome to Brick Army. My name is Steve and today we are going to be doing the M4A1 Sherman. Now you might ask me, why, if we're doing the Sherman, Steve, do you have a Panther in front of you? Well, the reason I have the Panther in front of me is that a number of weeks ago now I did this Panther, also by Quan Guan, and I wouldn't say it was a disaster, but I was very disappointed with it for several reasons. First of all, missing bits. There was just so many missing bits. The second reason is that it should have been in three colours: black, a dark grey and a light grey. And I ended up with four colours in there. I ended up with a sort of a metallic gunmetal grey, which can definitely be spotted here on the gun mat. Let me just bring that a little closer. We have gunmetal grey, gunmetal grey, gunmetal grey and dark grey, and these are the only four bits on the whole of the tank that are that shape, so it's a quality control issue, and I was hugely disappointed also by the fragility of this thing. The upper glacis here you don't want to look at too badly. If you do, it will fall off, as will lots of other bits on this thing. But I did like the Panther, and I did like what Quan Guan were trying to do with it, because having seen Panthers in real life, it's very accurate, really accurate. The level of detail on here is fantastic. The turret build is, although it is slightly multicoloured, excuse me, the turret, the design of the build of the turret is very good indeed. We've broken it again. Probably. You look at it funny and it does break. In fact, I'm going to put it away because it will annoy me otherwise. Oh, and there we go. Something just came pinging off. That, you can stay there. So, that Panther was a huge disappointment, but I really wanted to give Quan Guan another chance, and if I'm not pronouncing this correctly, somebody please tell me. I do my best. But Quan Guan, they do a fantastic, or look to be a fantastic range of particularly tanks and armoured personnel carriers, which brings me back to another next point. Quan Guan do not number their bags of bricks, which is a pain in the backside. I do have one that has a number on it, and for the other, what have we got? 10-12 bags, no numbers whatsoever. Now some of them are fairly obvious in that I've got a bag of tracks, a bag of minifigures, so we know where they come in. I think I figured out which is bag 2, or which are the bag 2s, which are the bag 3s. I'm not sure after that, I've got to say. And annoyingly, it does say in there when you need the different bags. So, quite what's going on there, Quan Guan, I have no idea. Can you please sort it out? Just a number, it's not that difficult, surely. Another reason I'm doing the Sherman is the Panther was 1200 bricks, something like that nature. This Sherman is around 750. Now there is a considerable price difference between the two, so I wanted to see really whether this was worth it, because they do a number of tanks in the lower brick bracket, as well as the high brick bracket. Oh, there's a tongue twister for you. So, is it worth getting, the expensive one over the cheaper one, or is the cheaper one as good as the more expensive one? Well, hopefully that's what we're here to find out today. So, I've done enough waffling. Let's crack on and build. As the Americans watched the war in Europe play out from 1939, it was realised that their armoured fighting vehicles were not up to the standards of other nations in both numbers and quality. Realising that sooner or later they would probably get drawn into the fighting, the goal was to produce a fast, dependable medium tank that could provide infantry support, break through enemy lines, and defeat any current tank. It also had to be quick to manufacture, cheap enough to be built in large numbers, and simple enough for battlefield maintenance. The M2 medium tank, a derivative of the M2 light tank, was considered obsolete, and the M3 was a stopgap that was complex to produce. With feedback from the British from their experiences dealing with the German panzers, in April 1941 the design was chosen, with prototypes received in September of that year. In February 1942, with the United States now in the war, the tank, after several revisions, was put into production. Incidentally, the second ever M4 produced, nicknamed Michael, was sent to Britain for evaluation. This can be seen at the Bovington Tank Museum. Unusually, the different designations of the Sherman A1, A2, A3, etc. did not mean that they were a linear improvement variation. The subtypes had more to do with engines and construction methods, so there were petrol and diesel variations, while some models had a cast turret and hull, while others were welded. During the course of the war, 49,234 M4 models were produced by many different manufacturers in the United States. Under the Lend-Lease programme, 17,184 were supplied to the British, who in turn supplied them to the Free Poles and Canadians, 4,102 to the Soviet Union, and 812 to the Chinese. The Sherman first saw battle in the Second Battle for El Alamein in North Africa by the British 8th Army in October of 1942. 252 of them had been modified for desert warfare and engaged a force of Panzer IIIs and Panzer IVs. The first combat action in November of 1942 with the United States troops was during Operation Torch, which was to eventually drive the Germans and Italians from North Africa. With the appearance of the Tiger and Panther, it was decided to upgrade the 75mm gun, which was replaced by a high-velocity 76mm gun during 1944, although by war's end, approximately half the tanks still had 75mm guns. The overall impression from the Soviets was good. The Sherman was liked for its reliability, ease of maintenance and firepower. However, it did struggle in some conditions due to its narrower tracks than the T-34, as well as being a taller target. While about one-third of all US M4s were sent to the Pacific, the overall terrain and conditions did not really favour the tank, although they were extremely useful against Japanese fortifications. By the time the Korean War broke out in 1950, there were very few tanks left in the Pacific area of operations, and a disparate force of 58 M4s was initially deployed. Fighting against ex-Soviet T-34s and T-34-85s, the M4s, which by this time mostly M4, A3, E8s, in other words the Sherman Jumbos, were very closely matched. Better ammunition, optics and training gave them a slight edge, with troops generally preferring the M4s over the newer M26 Pershing and the M46 Patterns because of their mobility, reliability and ease of maintenance. Overall, 43 countries other than the USA offered M4 Shermans, with participation in many of the smaller wars from Asia, Africa to the Middle East during the 20th century. The very last Shermans were finally retired from the Paraguayan military in 2018.
Hello again and welcome back. So, the review has the M4 Sherman redeemed Quan Guan. There it is. And pretty much, yes it has. As I said at the very start, this is a slightly simpler model, far less brick counts than the Panther, and actually this is a lot better for it. The reason that I picked this Sherman was because of the upper glacis being roughly a similar sort of design, a very steep angle in the same way that the Panther was. Now the Panther, as I mentioned before, you look at it in a funny manner and it falls apart. This is a completely different design philosophy, the way this has been put together, and it's so much better for it. So is it quite as detailed as Panther? No, nowhere close. Is it detailed enough for what it is? Yes, probably. It's certainly more than just a very basic build, but it's not as ultra realistic and as accurate as the Panther is. Yeah, it's a nice
halfway between. Now, there is quite a price difference between the two. Off the top of my head, I can't remember what the Panther was, but I think it was about £26. I'll put it in the down here how much it was. This was 18. Now, it's not perfect by any means. One of the only real issue I had with this was on the tracks. Now, the reason for that, and unfortunately this does again show Quan Guan and their quality control isn't quite there, is, and I'll put a still shot up here to show you, but basically I had about 7 or 8 links in the track come like that. Now, I've had to use 3 of them on one side to actually get the tracks long enough. They do go round. One side is slightly more fragile than the other, but it will do just about. But that Quan Guan still need to work on the quality control a bit. No missing pieces, a few bits over. The Quan Guan minifigures are very Quan Guan. They are completely different to just about anybody else. They're okay. I have to say overall, like, there's some of the others I do prefer, but these are fine. So, at £18, is this Sherman worth it? Absolutely, I would say it is. I think it's, yeah, and particularly I think if you there's very few small pieces involved here, so if you have got big fingers, or if you've got arthritis or something matter with your fingers, it's not a bad build to do. You don't have to be very, very dainty or anything like that with it, and this is pretty solid. You know, as I say, do that still moves, it's just hinged there. And one thing I do quite like actually, which is slightly unusual, is you can open the engine bay to see the engine without having to dismantle the turret or anything like that, which is, compared with some of the rest of them, it's very unusual and quite nice. So there we have it, the M4A1 Sherman by Quan Guan, who have almost redeemed themselves fully in my eyes, and hopefully in yours. Anyway, lovely to see you. You take care. Bye bye.